And I want to welcome you to today's subcommittee hearing, which will focus on the topic of pay flexibilities in the federal workforce. Appreciate everyone being here. We all want a federal government that runs efficiently and effectively for the American people. It's a bipartisan goal to find federal employees who are dedicated to serve our fellow citizens with excellence. Why would anyone want to have federal public servants that are not skilled and competent for the task? Attracting and keeping the best employees to serve in Washington, D.C. and around the country is an effort worthy of the subcommittee's time and attention. Federal workforce stretches across our nation with a different set of opportunities and challenges in each location. Some unique considerations within the federal workforce are long-standing and clear. The challenges posed can be as simple as the differences in climate and location. Imagine how different it is to attract a skilled federal worker to a post in rural northern town in Alaska than it is to Miami, Florida, or Tulsa, Oklahoma. However, we've also encountered federal workforce challenges that are not foreseeable or challenging due to varying economic circumstances. A prime example of this was the unexpected and dramatic 2006 discovery of large amounts of oil in eastern Montana and North Dakota. Since 2006, the oil boom in North Dakota has seen an incredible increase in the economic activity, such as housing, infrastructure demands, to name only just a few. With these demands came an inevitable tug of war between the private sector and government to see who could hire the best workers. I commend Ranking Member Heitkamp for her leadership in addressing the very real challenges that face her state and the Bakken region, and for her work on federal workforce and pay flexibility. I hope that with today's hearing, we can help make sure the federal government and the private sector have enough skilled workers to meet both of their demands. We have with us today two panels of witnesses who are prepared to share their own perspectives on these issues. In our first panel, we have Mrs. Brenda Roberts, Deputy Associate Director of Employee Services, Pay and Leave from the Office of Personnel Management. We have Mrs. Linda Jacksta, is that correct how I said that? Okay, thank you. Assistant Commissioner, Office of Human Resources Management from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And finally, Mrs. Deborah Warner, who is Director of Civilian Workforce Management, Deputy Chief of Staff for Manpower Personnel and Services from the U.S. Air Force. In our second panel, we will hear testimony from Mr. William Dugan, who is the President of the National Federation of Federal Employees, and Mr. Anthony Reardon, President of the National Treasury Employees Union. We thank each of you for being here this morning. I look forward to an informative discussion with our witnesses. And with that, I recognize our Ranking Member Heitkamp for her opening statement.
Thank you, Chair.
Because I have multiple military installations in my state, including Tinker Air Force Base, which is obviously a very significant sustainment depot. They have the same issue. They want to hire somebody, but in a great workforce location like Oklahoma is right now, people get snapped up. And so someone comes in, whether it's McAllister and the Army Ammunition Depot, or whether it's Tinker Air Force Base and the very large, very well-qualified, excellent civilian workforce that's there. They have an opening, they come through the application process, and 4 months later, they hear back. Well, they're not going to wait 4 months. In Oklahoma, they're going to get snapped up in another job in another place. And when they get the call, yes, you're hired, they're going to like, great, I've already been working at a different place for the last 3 months. Now they've got to decide if they're going to leave that place to be able to come back and work for the Air Force. This is an issue we have to solve, and it's more than just we're going to call you occasionally, because now we're stringing someone along. It has to be an efficient process. And what I heard you say was we're getting better at 2 months in advance to make sure there's not an opening out there. But to get qualified people, we've also got to have an efficient process. What can be done so that person's not strung along for 3 or 4 months in the hiring process to be able to fix that part of it? So we've got a qualified person who meets the minimum criteria. We put them in place and start the task.
Okay. Senator, thank you. Your timing is absolutely perfect.
Good. I'd like to hear that.
Absolutely. At Tinker, well aware of the challenges that we're having in that area, working with the Air Force Materiel Command. And I believe last week, and it may have been the week prior, we actually sent a team to Tinker to peel this back. I understand they want to hire 1,000 employees, and I don't have the occupations handy with me, but they want to hire 1,000, and they want to do it in 30 days. How are we going to get at it? So we have recruiters. We actually sent folks from the Air Force Personnel Center to Tinker to start getting a working group in order. And we've been in conversation with AFMC for quite some time, trying to streamline everything from the security process. The front end of hiring, we seem to have it, we're basically projecting, we've provided tools. Don't wait until the day that you have someone leaving to start recruitment.
Right.
Because if it takes 120 days, you're behind the curve. So we've provided strategic workforce guides, trying to help them get at, if you lose 10 contract specialists a year, then probably you need to overshoot your target. Don't wait till they're vacant. So we're providing those tools. But nonetheless, what we need to do is HR needs to be more hands-on with management. And as you know, we've centralized at the Air Force Personnel Center, much like our sister services. And there are times we need to go on the road, and we did that. We sent a team out there.
So give me a good length of time. If someone applies for a job, there's a job opening, someone applies for it outside. Now, if they're inside the workforce, I understand it's a different dynamic. They'll be transferred to different places.
Correct.
Outside,
all right.
New people in this situation, how long should be a reasonable amount of time that it should take before application, and they're qualified? Let's start there.
Right.
This is a qualified individual, and they're hired.
Okay. Obviously, the Office of Personnel Management goal is our 80 days from the time that we begin the recruitment action until we have an entrance on duty. The long pole in the tent, the area that takes the longest, and we're tracking, 15 days for a manager to make a selection. If they had to set up interviews, takes a little longer. The process to issue a certificate to a manager, we have that built like within 10 days from the time you receive it, you need to have that certificate. The area that we have got to get at is the back, what I call the onboarding. Security clearance, physical exam, drug testing. The employee getting released from their employer doesn't take that long. The part that takes so long is what we call the pre-employment process. And that could take, and is taking, upwards of 60 days for that piece. The front end, we've got it pretty well nugged through. It's the tail end that we have to get at. And we're trying to think of ways that we can do this. Obviously, we don't want to risk security at our locations by saying, we'll bring you on with waivers.
Check you later, right?
Yeah. But they are doing some of that where they can bring folks on and then be pursuing the security clearances. And obviously, there's a lot going on with OPM with the security area that we're trying to get through as well. So
can I ask the nice person next to you why it takes 60 days to be able to do security clearances? Ms. Roberts, what do you think? Where are we stuck at this point?
I'm sorry, I can't speak to that question. That's not my area of expertise.
We need to find a way to be able to resolve this, because this is repeated not only for the United States Air Force, but all across the federal workforce. The length of time that it takes to do onboard, we're losing out on some good people that want to be able to serve their fellow citizens in federal service. They've come, they've pursued it, they're interested in it, but they're also going to feed their family. And 2 months into this, they're going to give up. And they're going to go somewhere else. Though they're a qualified person that later a manager is going to say, that's the person I wanted and I can't get. Now the manager's frustrated they can't get the person they want. That person is saying, I really want to take that job, but I took a different one. We've got to figure out how to fix this. So how do we get out of this cycle?
Understand your concerns, and I will take that back.
Okay. Be great.
And Senator, if I could add, the folks at Tinker, the human resource community, the management community, the labor community have really helped us, and they have stepped up. Over a year, we've had a working group, what we call rapid improvement events, to try to take chunks, the entire the spectrum, and break it apart. So we appreciate that they are really, because the Air Force Material Command is about 48% of our Air Force civilian population.
Yeah.
So they have a vested interest.
I have to say, it is a phenomenal team at Tinker. Team Tinker is really an amazing group of leadership there, from General Levy all the way through the process. There are civilian, our union folks. They cooperate very well together. But this issue is also repeated in McAllister. It's repeated all over multiple bases and issues. And it's across our workforce. I'm sure CBP deals with some of the same issues of length of time on that. Let me ask a question as well. One of the things you talked about, and I am going to move to other people as well, so I'm not picking on you today. But you talked about when we deal with North Dakota, and that the boom started in 2006. And then working through the process of deciding locality pay or special salary packages and working through that process. The difficult thing for me to hear is the boom starts in 2006, the transition in jobs is well on its way in 2007, and special salary packages were approved in March and April of 2015. That's a long 9 years of trying to fight for employees. How do we get more agile in making decisions across our structure, whether it's United States Air Force or any of our other areas, to be able to see this trend? Because that trend goes down as well. I mean, there will be a time, as it has been in Oklahoma, where I serve, and it will be in North Dakota, and someday a long time from now, when the oil boom goes down, and suddenly that pressure's not there.
Right.
How do we become more agile that it doesn't take 9 years to move from boom to we're going to adjust pay?
Right. In taking a look at the history that I tried to do for this, and exactly what you're saying, 2006, what's going on? We actually, and it gets me back to position I'd said earlier, do they think they want to try to figure it out on their own, and then they get in so deep that they're so far behind the curve that now that it is a crisis? That could have happened. What we do know is back in 12, we tried to pursue, they thought locality pay. Let's get at that. Whether or not we had individuals who talked about special salary rate, whether they wanted to come to the air staff, but what I see on the record is around 2012, they came to the air staff policy.
Let me just ask, is the locality pay an easier trigger, an easier hurdle in that? Or
No, sir.
Tell me when they're making the decision, how they're going to decide between the two, because I understand
Well-
all those options are on the table. You've got the 3 Rs,
Right.
you've got locality pay, you've got the special packages.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make the decision?
And that's what I think, as an Air Force, what we've done is try to educate the community on what the tools are in the toolkit. And I know that OPM can speak to locality pay, but I'll offer up what I have on that. The locality pay gets more at wages in the local area versus cost of living in the local area. And that was pursued. I think the Federal Salary Council, there was a package that went forward. It was disapproved. And then we started the process in 13. They tried another reattack from the installation. The leadership said, let's go forward, let's give it another shot. And it didn't make it through DC Pass. And then at some point, someone said, well, we've got other tools in our toolkit. And I think OPM even offered up, hey, why are you not using the tools that you currently have aggressively? Let us put together a working group. So I think, again, sir, they didn't get ahead of it where we should have. And right now for the Air Force, we have provided the tools at every location. And if there are any locations who are struggling, what I want them to do is don't be afraid to raise your hand and come to the air staff and say, I cannot figure this out, or why don't you help me? I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because a lot of our installations, we may be 1 and 2 deep in expertise. So,
Sure.
Thank you, sir.